I'm currently in a place called Pensacola, Florida. It's a couple of 100 kilometers from New Orleans and a short drive to the Alabama border. And I've been coming here for nearly 2 years to get treatment for my mental illness with a doctor here who's regarded as the best in the world for ketamine infusions. And I want to tell you a little bit about the treatment I get, but before I do that, I thought I'd give you a little bit of background as to the use of ketamine and how it's been developed. Ketamine is a drug that's been used in hospitals around the world as an anesthetic for over 50 years. It's regarded by the World Health Organization as one of the most important and safest drugs available. The US military used ketamine as an anesthetic on the battlefield. They asked Yale University to conduct some trials into the use of ketamine for mental health issues. And all of those studies have come with the same outcome and followed very much the same research protocol, which has shown that having an infusion of a set amount of ketamine under the right conditions for around about an hour, having around 6 of those infusions over a 2-week period, has a rapid and incredible impact on alleviating the symptoms of depression and anxiety in people that have traditionally been classed as treatment resistant, and that means that they haven't had the benefits of pharmaceutical treatment before that. And to give you an example, I've utilised around 15 different types of antidepressants and antipsychotic medication and combinations and dosages of those without getting too much benefit. However, ketamine for people like me is the holy grail. It's been able to, over a period of time, slowly reduce my dependence on medication, but more importantly, it's removed a lot of symptoms that I found unbearable. And a lot of people who suffer from similar symptoms, they're pushed to the point of suicide. And one of the most incredible things about ketamine as a drug is that it's been available for many years. It's available around the world. How it works, well, look, that's one for the researchers, but what they all agree on is that used in a precise way and under the right treatment, infusion standards, it has the benefit of causing or creating a series of effects which cause the brain to start to regrow neurons and reconnect parts of the brain that depression has effectively killed. And what that has meant is that instead of a drug like an antidepressant, which helps with the production of serotonin, it's looking at actually regrowing the parts of the brain that depression has killed. So it's coming at the problem from a different angle. And whilst that's a pretty horrible oversimplification, the point of it is that, you know, if you've got a problem that's not being solved by a particular strategy, you need a new strategy. And ketamine for people like me is certainly the most incredible development that we've come across. One of the things that you might not be aware of is that people can get treatment for mental health conditions using ketamine in the States now. There's around 50 treatment facilities from the East Coast to the West Coast. They use different protocols, and the different doctors have different treatment strategies that they believe works better than other practices. And that's the benefit of the US being such a large economy and such a large consumer of antidepressants, that the demand is there, so the research is very much taking place by these practices. What you need to understand is that you can't just get treatment without a screening process, and I had to go through a pretty extensive screening process and application process before I was accepted to be able to get treatment. So it's certainly not something you can walk in off the street. Cost-wise, it varies between a couple of $1,000s to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on where you go. And it is an off-label use of the medication, and that's not uncommon for medication to be used in an off-label sense. And if you suffer from a medical condition like me, when I used antipsychotic medication, that was an off-label use. So it was something that they believed the medication might have had some benefits, but it wasn't in line with what antipsychotic medication is designed for, so that's termed as an off-label use. That just meant that I had to have my doctor's approval to use it, and it wasn't covered by the PBS scheme. But you know, when you get to that level of distress, the money is not always the driving factor, but it certainly for a lot of people is a barrier. And it's certainly a barrier for most people to be able to get treatment, as I do here in the States. I picked Dr. Grass here in Pensacola quite simply because I wanted to find the doctor that had the best chance of treating me, and Dr. Grass was in Yale in the 90s when they developed the protocol. He's been doing infusions for over 20 years. He has his own patented treatment protocol, and probably the big thing, the reason why I come is because he has his own patented version of ketamine, which is the most effective that's available here in the States. And to give you some context behind that, when somebody uses an antidepressant, the success rate of that benefiting them is around about 35%, and 3 to 5 antidepressants, the success rate is around 50% of removing the symptoms. Now, I have tried a lot of antidepressants without too much success, but Dr. Grass treats predominantly people who have never had any success before, and his ketamine infusions remove symptoms in 85% of his patients. So he's taking a pool of people who are effectively, the toughest there are available, people who are on the verge of literally suicide, and at the very best having a very low quality of life, and he's able to remove the symptoms on an ongoing basis in 85% of those people with a drug which is incredibly cheap, and it is available around the world, in almost any country, in any Western country. And you know, when you think about that, it's difficult to understand why there's not a greater discussion in the mental health community about ketamine and the benefits of ketamine. Now, back home in Australia, the Black Dog Institute in Sydney is conducting trials of ketamine, and if you are someone like me and you think that that's a drug that you'd like to trial, I would encourage you to go to their website and apply to be part of their trial. And it is, if nothing else, it will give you the opportunity to have exposure to the medication and see if there's some benefits to you. So I've just finished my latest round of treatment. So I had 3 infusions. I've had over 30 infusions in total since November of 2016. And the latest 3 that I had were, they're really successful. I find the particular infusion not to be, it's not enjoyable. You wouldn't come and have ketamine infusion because you think that you are going to get some sort of hallucinogenic trip that you'll enjoy. You will have a hallucinogenic trip, but you probably won't enjoy it, and you're really not going to enjoy the nausea that follows. But for me, it's a small price to pay for the benefits that flow from that. The infusion lasts for about an hour, and then I normally spend about half an hour afterwards just recovering there before I'll then return to where I'm staying. And there's no doubt that there's a large degree of skepticism around ketamine and its use, and there's a large degree of skepticism around the long-term effects of ketamine on the human body. What I would say about that is there is absolutely no debate at all that on a short-term basis ketamine is safe, and there's no debate at all, certainly here in the States, that ketamine does dramatically and almost remarkably remove the symptoms of depression, and even more so around patients who are suffering from the suicide tendencies. And when you're dealing with a group of individuals like that, short-term solutions are really important because we're suffering from immediate and debilitating symptoms. We're not too worried about long-term. Certainly someone who is on the verge of suicide doesn't have a long-term time frame. They need to get help immediately. So the use of the drug in that regard is, I think that the boxes have been ticked. As far as long term, yep, sure. There's no doubt there's more research that has to take place. But using my own example and using the theory that if repeated use of ketamine helps to regrow the networks in your brain, what we've found is the longer that I've gone and the more treatment that I've had, the better my infusions have been. You might be asking why this isn't being promoted heavily by pharmaceutical companies, and the clear answer is that there is no patent on ketamine. The drug has been out of patent for a number of years, which means that there's no benefit for the big pharmaceutical companies to make it readily available as a treatment for depression. That, you know, there is a body of evidence out there that has already been researched and the results are proven. Maybe in Australia we're a little bit too insular and we haven't spent the time researching it, but here in the States it's widely available. It is saving lives. I'm meeting people every day that I go to the clinic. I meet someone who has a smile where, you know, not too long ago their life expectancy was, you know, by their own admission down to days. And that situation is not unique to the States. It's something that happens at home and it happens quite broadly, but there's no reason why that has to continue. And if I'll put some links in this post that you can follow to get some more information. I'm happy to take emails and answer questions that way. He's a happy boy signing out from Pensacola, Florida. Treatment done, heading home, see the puppies and see my friends and a very special girl.